Hey guys, it's Kayla. I'm so psyched that you're here. This is the last video in a little mini series I've been conducting about the importance of trusting God. This is the very last video for the month of June, and it's a really important one because we're going to be talking about how we trust God with the impossible and trusting that God can do the impossible. So of course, as we've discussed in the other videos, we're going to jump into the Bible to talk about a really important story that I'm sure many of you have heard before. And it's about Gideon and the 300 men. It's going to be in Judges. I know, surprise, surprise, we're not in Genesis this week. Okay, so it starts in Judges chapter 6. And a little background here. The Midianites would come every year for 7 years and steal the Israelites' harvest, okay? So they would just come and take all their hard work and steal their harvest for 7 years. So at this point, Gideon is like crying out to the Lord, being like, hello God, like where are you? Have you forgotten about your people, the Israelites? We're sick of the Midianites and what they're doing to us. Like, where are you? Have you forsaken us? And God speaks to Gideon and basically tells him like, no, I haven't forgotten about you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use you, Gideon, to help the Israelites in this situation. So if we jump to Judges chapter 6, verse 15, this is Gideon speaking. So he said to him, "O my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." And the Lord said to him, "Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man." So this kind of reminds me of the breakdown that we did of Moses and the burning bush, because here, just as we saw there, God gave Gideon a promise and is saying, hey Gideon, I'm going to use you to help save the Israelites. But Gideon is like, are you sure? Gideon's basically saying, okay, my family is like the weakest and I'm the weakest in my family. So are you positive that you're going to use me? God sometimes gives us promises, yet our human nature almost like doubts the fact that that's really going to happen. So Gideon was like, are you sure? So Gideon, rightfully so, is like, okay, hold on. I need a sign that this is really you, God. I need a sign that this angel of the Lord is you and that this plan is from you. So what Gideon does is he says, hold on a second, stay right here. I'm going to go run and be back. So he basically runs, he grabs meat and bread, I'm pretty sure, and he runs back to the angel of the Lord. And then he brings it and like puts it on like the rock or the altar, and the angel of the Lord uses his staff and lights the whole thing on fire. So Gideon is like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is you, God, totally get it. Confirmation number one. Then you would think Gideon would have all the information he needed to say, okay, cool, this plan is from God. But no, he still needed 2 more confirmations. So for the second time, Gideon is like, okay, God, I'm just going to test this out one more time. So he's like, okay, God, I'm going to put this thing of fleece here on the ground and I'm going to go away. I think it was like overnight or something like that. And he's like, and when I come back, if the fleece is wet and the ground is dry, then I'll know it's you. So then fast forward, lo and behold, he comes and exactly that happened. The fleece was wet, but the ground was dry. And he's like, okay, wow, okay, this is God. But no, not so fast. Gideon is like, okay, he even said, he's like, God, don't be mad, but like, I just need one more sign. So he tells God that he's going to do the opposite. So he puts the fleece down. This time he said, okay, God, if it's you, and if you're really going to use me to take, the Israelites out of the situation, then I'm going to put the fleece down. And this time I want the fleece to be dry and the ground wet. And again, fast forward, of course, that's exactly what God did. So there are 3 confirmations that A, this was truly God speaking to Gideon, and B, that he was going to use Gideon to help out the Israelites in this situation. So 3 confirmations here. Okay, so Gideon is like, all right, God, I hear you. I guess you're going to use me. Gideon had an army of 32,000 men. But God is like, no. Actually, you have way too many men here. In fact, if you have an army this big, the Israelites are going to think that it was by their hands that they won over the Midianites, not because God helped them with this. So God is like, you have too many people. First, Gideon tells the army and basically says, hey, if anyone's scared or not fully into this, like, feel free to go. 10,000 people are left. And God is like, no, there's still too many people. Gideon's like, are you for real, God? Like, what are you doing? So God tells Gideon to tell the 10,000 men to go to the water and basically like drink from the river or whatever it was. God said to pay attention to how the men drank the water. So there were 2 camps of men. A camp of men that drank the water like using their hands, and then men that went down on their knees and like drank the water like dogs. So then God says that that the men that went down and like scooped up the water, that those were going to be the men for the army. And that ended up being 300 men. So remember, they started off with 32,000, now down to 300 men. Gideon's like, all right, God, I trust you. This is what we're going to do. Fast forward that same night, Gideon is with the 300 men, and God basically tells him to go down to the camp of the Midianites and tells him that he's going to hear something that's going to give him confidence that he truly will help the Israelites, beat the Midianites through God's hands. So Gideon goes down to the camp of the Midianites with one of his servants. And this is Judges chapter 7, verse 3. And when Gideon had come, there was a man telling a dream to his companion. He said, I have had a dream. To my surprise, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian. It came to a tent and struck it so that it fell and overturned, and the tent collapsed. Then his companion answered and said, This is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand God has delivered Midian and the whole camp. So basically these two Midianites, one guy had the dream and is telling the other guy, and the guy who's interpreting the dream is like, man, your dream is telling us that this Israelite Gideon is going to come and basically destroy us all. And Gideon and his servant are overhearing this, and that gives him the confidence to be like, okay, yep, like, last piece of information, God is in this, God has our back, like, let's do this thing. So then Gideon goes back to the 300 men, and he divides them into 3 camps. And each man has a trumpet, has a flame, like a torch, and then has a pitcher over the flame so that no one like sees the fire. So they all go down to the Midianite camp, and they're in, again, those 3 groups. And basically when Gideon decides that it's time, Gideon blows the horn and takes the pitcher that's over the flame and like throws it down and basically just causes like a ruckus. And all the individual, or the 3 groups that he had, they do the exact same thing. So the Midianites all come out of their tents, and they hear the trumpets, they hear the, the ceramic pitchers being thrown down, making all the noise. They see the fire, and they're freaked out and confused. They actually, some of them start killing each other because they're so confused, and they think they're just being like attacked. So they're just literally attacking their own men. And then some Midianites even run away, but Gideon and his men capture them all. So the Midianites were truly delivered into the Israelites' hands by God. This is literally impossible, right? God did the impossible here for Gideon. The fact that 300 men can destroy a whole group of Midianites, and there were so many of them, like it even says it here in the Bible, there's like masses of tents and people and camels. It's literally impossible, especially because they didn't even fight. The Israelites didn't even fight. So God fought that battle for them. They didn't have to really fight. They just went out there because God had this plan for them. And God can do the impossible. So when God has a plan, we shouldn't ask questions. We should just go with it and trust him, because his plan might not make sense to our human minds, but he can do the impossible. So this is living proof of it. So just to wrap it all up, I want to highlight a couple of lessons that we can get here from this scripture in Judges. Number 1, we need to understand that it's not through our own hands, but it's by God's hand that he can do the impossible. And that's what God was trying to get Gideon to realize. And that's why when they had the army of 32,000 men, God is like, no. Because if they win, the Israelites are going to think it was them. It needed to be this like drastically crazy plan that there's no way to describe it except God. And once we understand that, I think that's where the true surrender happens. And from true surrender comes true freedom. Because when you realize that you're not the one fighting your battles, that the Almighty is the one who's fighting your battles, and he has your back because you're this close with him, there's nothing to stress about or worry about because he's got your back. So you don't have to stress about doing things, in your own might, by your own hands. He's got you, and he can do the impossible. We've seen it over and over again in scripture. I've seen it over and over again in my life, and I want you to experience the same thing. So lesson number 2, it's when we don't look at our earthly circumstances, but have complete trust and faith in God. That is when we become victorious. That's exactly what we saw here with Gideon. He looked at his earthly circumstances and things looked bleak and things didn't make sense. But when he had faith and trust in God, God is the one who orchestrated that victory. And that's when you're truly victorious. Gideon and the 300 men, they were victorious without even having like a true battle. That is ultimate victory. Alright guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm super excited that we have completed a wonderful month together where we dove into the concept of trusting God and its importance. This was the last video to wrap that up. I'm excited to start a new month. We're starting the month of July next week, which is insane. I'm excited to see what God has in store for the next month. I've been communing with him and talking with him to see exactly what we need as a body. So stay tuned next month to figure out what the new topic will be for the month of July. If you liked what you saw, feel free to like this video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to my channel to be notified when I post new videos every week. Alright guys, peace, love, and blessings to you all.